The golden envelope arrived at Kensington Palace at exactly 9:47 a.m. on January 31st, 2026. Inside was not a legal summons, but an invitation, an offer that would reshape the entertainment industry's relationship with the British monarchy and simultaneously signal the end of an era for those who had once promised to revolutionize royal representation. 2 hours earlier in Los Angeles, a different envelope had reached the Superior Court. This one contained Netflix's formal lawsuit against Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, seeking $100 million in damages for what the streaming giant called one of the most egregious breaches of contract in entertainment history. 2 letters, 2 worlds, one unmistakable line drawn in institutional sand. The Sussex Netflix deal had seemed revolutionary in September 2020. A young royal couple with global appeal, a production company with unlimited resources, and a mandate to create content that would supposedly democratize the monarchy. The agreement stipulated between 8 and 10 premium projects across multiple categories: scripted series, documentaries, feature films, children's programming. In return, Netflix advanced $40 million with a potential total package worth up to $100 million. The world watched and waited for content that would change how people understood royal life. By January 2025, after 4 years of waiting, the reality had become impossible to ignore. Only 3 documentary projects had been released. Each arrived late. Each fell short of original specifications. Each required significant Netflix internal intervention to reach even basic broadcast standards. Harry and Meghan 2022 arrived 6 months behind schedule, requiring multiple edits and reshoots. Heart of Invictus 2023 underperformed significantly in viewership metrics, largely salvaged by Netflix's production team working overtime. Live to Lead 2022 featured minimal involvement from the royal couple themselves, with most of the creative heavy lifting handled by professional documentarians Netflix had hired to rescue the project. Netflix's internal accounting told a stark story: content delivered valued at approximately $25 million, additional development and recovery expenses $15 million, opportunity costs from delayed projects $20 million, reputational damage to Netflix's documentary division $20 million, punitive damages for breach and bad faith $20 million, total $100 million. But the numbers, while significant, mask something more serious. Netflix wasn't just suing for money. The company was making a statement. Celebrity partnerships, even with royals, required accountability. The complaint detailed a pattern that extended beyond simple delays. Missed deadlines became chronic. Scheduled development meetings were repeatedly canceled or conducted with minimal preparation. Creative proposals arrived vague, derivative, and seemingly designed to minimize actual production work. Internal Netflix emails submitted as evidence painted a picture of mounting frustration. One exchange from March 2023 captured a development executive writing to his supervisor, "They're not interested in actual creative collaboration. They want the Netflix logo attached to their brand and nothing more." But the fraud allegations cut deeper. Netflix argued that Harry and Meghan never intended to fulfill the production agreement. They had sought the upfront cash, the executive credibility, and the platform association with a major global company. Once secured, they had essentially abandoned the collaboration. The contract's language about creative discretion gave them cover, but the pattern of non-engagement suggested intentional misrepresentation from the beginning. While Los Angeles processed legal documents, Kensington Palace received something entirely different. Netflix's proposal for Catherine, Princess of Wales, came wrapped in language about heritage, education, and authentic service. The project, tentatively titled Legacy of Learning, A Royal Voyage Through Knowledge, represented everything the Sussex deal should have been. 6 episodes, each focused on areas where Catherine had already invested years of documented work: early childhood development, historical literacy, elder care and dignity, environmental stewardship, trauma healing and resilience. The series would weave together Catherine's existing charity visits with newly filmed interviews and personal narration from the princess herself. What distinguished this proposal from the Sussex arrangement was structural integrity. Netflix had built in measurable outcomes: educational impact metrics, collaboration agreements with UK-based NGOs, deliverables tied to real social change, not celebrity brand enhancement. The company was essentially proposing partnership with someone who had demonstrated consistent commitment to substantive work over more than a decade. Catherine's response came through palace channels within 48 hours. Her team was reviewing the proposal carefully. It aligned with her existing charitable vision. The decision would be made on merit, not celebrity. It was vintage Catherine. No drama, no immediate yes or no, just careful consideration of how to best serve the causes she had already dedicated herself to. Meghan's response was considerably more volatile. According to sources close to the Sussex household, the Duchess reacted with fury when news of the Catherine offer leaked through entertainment media. She interpreted Netflix's outreach to Catherine as a deliberate betrayal, a calculated effort to displace Archewell and position Catherine as the monarchy's preferred entertainment partner. Within hours, she allegedly contacted senior Netflix executives demanding the company terminate all discussions with Catherine. The request was rejected. That same evening, an even more damaging story circulated. Meghan had reportedly claimed that Catherine must have been negotiating with Netflix behind the scenes for months, that the palace had actively sabotaged Archewell's prospects to favor Catherine, that institutional favoritism was preventing the Sussexes from accessing fair entertainment opportunities. The palace's response came through King Charles III directly. In a rare statement that broke with decades of royal protocol, the monarch made his position unmistakably clear. Catherine, he said, embodied the vision of a modern constitutional monarchy rooted in service, education, and cultural stewardship. Any collaboration that advanced these values was consistent with the Crown's mission. Without naming Meghan, the implication was devastating. The palace had made its choice, and that choice was Catherine. What made this moment so significant was what it revealed about institutional priorities. The monarchy wasn't simply defending Catherine. It was actively redefining what royal partnership with media companies should look like. Charles had reached a tipping point with decades of royal restraint. The days of responding to accusation with dignified silence were ending. When institutional integrity was at stake, the Crown would now defend itself aggressively. The contrast between the two letters that arrived on January 31st became the defining image of the moment. One envelope carried a lawsuit seeking $100 million. The other carried an invitation to participate in substantive work. One represented the collapse of a relationship built on transactional celebrity. The other represented the beginning of a partnership grounded in shared purpose. In the weeks following the Netflix announcements, entertainment industry analysis became increasingly unflinching. The Sussex deal had failed not because Netflix didn't understand celebrity, but because the couple never intended to deliver. Every excuse offered, every explanation provided, every claim about creative differences masked a fundamental reality. They had taken the money without planning to do the work. They had accepted the platform without embracing the responsibility. Meanwhile, Catherine's appointment to the Netflix educational project was framed not as competition, but as institutional evolution. She wasn't replacing the Sussexes. She was demonstrating what authentic partnership looked like. Her documented track record in early childhood development, mental health advocacy, environmental stewardship, and veterans care provided the foundation. She wasn't leveraging these causes for celebrity. She was offering them to Netflix as the substance for genuine educational content. The legal discovery process in the Netflix versus Sussex lawsuit began in earnest by mid-February. Netflix's legal team subpoenaed internal Archewell communications, financial records, and scheduling documents. What emerged in depositions and email exchanges painted a detailed picture of a relationship that had deteriorated rapidly from initial enthusiasm to mutual frustration and eventual institutional indifference. Harry's deposition, conducted over 3 days in Los Angeles, revealed a man increasingly disconnected from the production process. He acknowledged missing numerous development meetings attributed to his health concerns and security constraints. When confronted with specific examples of rejected creative proposals, he claimed Netflix had misunderstood Archewell's vision. When presented with timelines showing delays, he blamed shifting institutional circumstances, public controversies, and the demands of raising 3 children. Meghan's deposition proved more combative. She insisted that Netflix had imposed unrealistic expectations, that the streamer had failed to provide adequate creative support, that the couple's involvement should be evaluated based on vision and intention rather than specific deliverables. She denied intentionally abandoning the project, instead characterizing the Sussex involvement as an evolution rather than a failure. When Netflix's legal team presented internal emails showing her dismissing production team suggestions and rejecting pre-approved collaborators, she characterized these as normal creative feedback, not obstruction. But the emails told a different story. One exchange from January 2024 captured Meghan writing to a Netflix executive, "We're not interested in standard documentary formats. We want something that reflects our brand values and personal narrative." The response from Netflix's head of documentary programming was damning in its brevity. "Your brand values appear to be self-promotion, not education. That's not what we signed up for." By March 2026, settlement negotiations had begun. Netflix's legal team indicated willingness to resolve the matter for $50 to $60 million rather than pursue a full trial. The Sussex legal team countered with offers in the 20 to 30 million range. The gap remained substantial, and more importantly, the underlying issue remained unresolved. Netflix wasn't primarily seeking money. The company wanted to establish precedent that celebrity obligations carried teeth, that contracts meant something, that platforms would no longer allow high-profile figures to extract cash without delivering value. The public impact of the lawsuit's progression was immediate and severe. Media coverage shifted from speculation to documented fact. Every email excerpt, every deposition transcript, every piece of evidence made clear that the Sussex-Netflix relationship had been fundamentally transactional. The couple had never intended to deliver comprehensive programming. They had wanted the prestige, the advance payment, and the association with a major platform without the underlying commitment that such partnership required. Industry observers noted the contrast between the Sussex failure and the emerging Catherine project. Where Harry and Meghan had sought to extract value from their royal status, Catherine was providing value by leveraging her already established work. She wasn't asking Netflix to build her credibility. She was offering Netflix the opportunity to document work she had already been doing for over a decade. By April 2026, the Netflix proposal with Catherine had evolved from preliminary discussion to formal development. The palace announced that the princess had agreed to participate in the Legacy of Learning series, with filming tentatively scheduled to begin in June. The announcement included specifics about subject matter, filming locations, and collaborative partners: the Natural History Museum, the British Red Cross, University College London. These weren't vague institutional associations. They were concrete, documentable partnerships with organizations Catherine had already been working with for years. The contrast with the Sussex arrangement couldn't have been sharper. The Netflix-Sussex deal had been built on promise. The Netflix-Catherine project was being built on demonstrated capability. One was aspirational. The other was actual. One was about creating something new. The other was about documenting something that already existed and was already succeeding. As the Netflix lawsuit proceeded through discovery and toward settlement negotiations, Harry and Meghan faced a broader institutional abandonment. Apple TV Plus, once rumored to be interested in Sussex content, quietly ended any ongoing discussions. Amazon Studios issued similar denials. The streaming giants that had once viewed the Sussexes as valuable content partners had apparently decided the reputational risk now outweighed the celebrity benefit. What had once seemed like unlimited entertainment opportunities was drying up completely. The monarchy, by contrast, was consolidating its media relationships. Netflix was being reframed not as a threat, but as a tool for advancing educational and social missions. Other streaming platforms began inquiring about potential collaborations. BBC Studios expressed interest in joint ventures. The palace was systematically reclaiming narrative control by demonstrating that institutional credibility combined with authentic purpose was far more valuable than celebrity alone. By May 2026, financial analysts were tracking the broader implications of the Sussex financial collapse. The Montecito estate, purchased for $14.65 million with a substantial mortgage, was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. Annual security costs exceeded $2.3 million. Property taxes ran over $150,000. The monthly operational burn rate was estimated at between $250,000 and $350,000. Without stable income streams, the household was hemorrhaging capital. If the Netflix lawsuit resulted in a significant judgment against them, the financial consequences would be catastrophic. Bankruptcy was being discussed in serious financial circles, not as speculation, but as logical possibility. The couple's liabilities exceeded their liquid assets. Their revenue streams had contracted dramatically. Their institutional support had evaporated. The mathematical reality was becoming inescapable. The couple that had left the royal family to build independent financial empires was facing the prospect of complete financial collapse. What had begun as a dual story of institutional competition had become something more tragic. One path, the Catherine path, led toward expanded purpose, documented impact, and deepening institutional partnership. The other path, the Sussex path, led toward legal liability, financial pressure, and institutional abandonment. The two letters that arrived on January 31, 2026, had captured in symbolic form the divergence between authentic service and transactional celebrity. In late May, during a private dinner at Kensington Palace, Catherine sat across from King Charles and discussed what the Netflix partnership would actually mean, not just for her schedule, not just for the projects themselves, but for what the monarchy would become through this decision. Charles, visibly moved, spoke of the Crown's responsibility to lead by example, to demonstrate that institutional purpose could coexist with media engagement, that service could be documented without becoming performance. Catherine listened, as she always did, with complete attention. She understood that saying yes to Netflix was larger than entertainment. It was a statement about what the monarchy valued. It was institutional endorsement of education, compassion, and substantive social contribution. It was the Crown saying clearly that these things mattered more than celebrity, more than spectacle, more than the transactional relationships that had defined so much recent royal engagement with global platforms. The months that followed would only make the institutional choice more absolute. The Sussex lawsuit would proceed towards settlement. The Catherine project would move into active production. The divergence between the two paths would become impossible to ignore. The monarchy had made its choice about what it valued, who it trusted, and what kind of partnership it believed served the Crown's future. In late May, during a private dinner at Kensington Palace, Catherine sat across from King Charles and discussed what the Netflix partnership would actually mean. Not just for her schedule, not just for the projects themselves, but for what the monarchy would become through this decision. Charles, visibly moved, spoke of the Crown's responsibility to lead by example, to demonstrate that institutional purpose could coexist with media engagement, that service could be documented without becoming performance. Catherine listened, as she always did, with complete attention. She understood that saying yes to Netflix was larger than entertainment. It was a statement about what the monarchy valued. It was institutional endorsement of education, compassion, and substantive social contribution. It was the Crown saying clearly that these things mattered more than celebrity, more than spectacle, more than the transactional relationships that had defined so much recent royal engagement with global platforms. The months that followed would only make the institutional choice more absolute. The Sussex lawsuit would proceed towards settlement. The Catherine project would move into active production. The divergence between the two paths would become impossible to ignore. The monarchy had made its choice about what it valued, who it trusted, and what kind of partnership it believed served the Crown's future. By June 2026, as filming for Legacy of Learning began in earnest, the institutional message became impossible to ignore. Catherine appeared at the Natural History Museum with documentary crews, not as a ceremonial figurehead, but as an active participant in the creative process. She asked questions, she offered insights, she insisted on accuracy and authenticity in every frame. This wasn't a princess reading from cue cards. This was an educated, engaged woman using her platform to advance causes she had spent over a decade studying and implementing. Netflix executives who had worked with both the Sussexes and Catherine later described the experience as night and day. With Harry and Meghan, production had felt like managing difficult clients who wanted credit without contribution. With Catherine, it felt like collaborating with a genuine partner who understood that content creation was about more than visibility. She was meticulous about message. She was passionate about impact. She understood that every frame carried responsibility. Meanwhile, the Sussex settlement discussions were collapsing. By late June, Netflix's patience had expired. The company withdrew its settlement offer and moved forward with full trial preparation. The legal team made clear they intended to pursue maximum damages. The fraud allegations would be highlighted. The pattern of deception would be documented. The public trial would become a referendum on whether celebrity could exploit institutional credibility without accountability. Harry and Meghan's response grew increasingly desperate. Their legal team filed motions attempting to seal discovery documents, arguing privacy concerns. The court rejected these motions repeatedly. Their spokesperson released statements suggesting Netflix was using the lawsuit to advance a competing narrative about the monarchy, but each explanation only reinforced the original narrative. They had taken the money, they hadn't delivered, now they were facing consequences. The institutional contrast was almost poetic in its clarity. Catherine was creating content that would educate millions about early childhood development, environmental stewardship, and veteran support. Netflix was documenting her work as a case study in authentic royal partnership. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan were being deposed about why they hadn't done the work they had contracted to do. By July, the palace released Catherine's complete 2026 schedule. It was comprehensive, detailed, and staggering in scope. 17 major engagements across 4 continents, 23 film sessions for the Legacy of Learning series, 12 joint ventures with international educational organizations, every commitment documentable, every deliverable measurable, every outcome trackable. This was what institutional accountability looked like. This was what partnership with global platforms could become when grounded in authentic purpose. The Sussex financial crisis deepened simultaneously. In July 2026, the first major creditor moved to enforce payment. A Los Angeles-based wealth management firm holding a significant portion of Archwell's outstanding obligations filed a lien against their liquid assets. The move sent shockwaves through their remaining financial structure. If other creditors followed suit, bankruptcy would become not just possible but inevitable. By July 2026, the palace released Catherine's complete 2026 schedule. It was comprehensive, detailed, and staggering in scope. 17 major engagements across 4 continents, 23 filmed sessions for the Legacy of Learning series, 12 joint ventures with international educational organizations, every commitment documentable, every deliverable measurable, every outcome trackable. This was what institutional accountability looked like. This was what partnership with global platforms could become when grounded in authentic purpose. The Sussex financial crisis deepened simultaneously. In July 2026, the first major creditor moved to enforce payment. A Los Angeles-based wealth management firm holding a significant portion of Archwell's outstanding obligations filed a lien against their liquid assets. The move sent shockwaves through their remaining financial structure. If other creditors followed suit, bankruptcy would become not just possible, but inevitable. What happened next would define the entire trajectory of the remaining legal proceedings. In early August, Netflix's legal team obtained access to Archwell's internal financial records through discovery. What they found was far worse than anyone had anticipated. The foundation had been systematically misrepresenting its charitable work. Funds designated for educational initiatives had been diverted to personal expenses. Donor money intended for specific projects had been reallocated without disclosure. The pattern suggested not just negligence, but deliberate financial manipulation. Netflix's lawyers immediately expanded the fraud allegations. They added counts related to financial misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, and potential money laundering through charitable channels. The lawsuit that had seemed like a straightforward breach of contract case had evolved into something far more serious. This was now about criminal potential. This was about institutional fraud. The palace's response was measured but unmistakable. A statement released through Buckingham Palace noted that the Crown was aware of the expanded allegations and was fully cooperating with relevant authorities. The institutional distance from Harry and Meghan became complete. They were no longer wayward royals. They were subjects of potential criminal investigation. By mid-August, the Montecito estate was showing for sale, not formally announced. But word spread through Los Angeles real estate circles that the property was being quietly marketed to potential buyers. The asking price, set at $18.5 million, reflected the market value, but also the desperation of the sellers. They needed liquidity, they needed it fast, and they needed it before any court judgment made the property subject to asset seizure. Catherine, meanwhile, was in Kenya. Part of the Legacy of Learning initiative involved documenting educational innovation in Commonwealth nations. She visited rural schools, spoke with educators, and filmed segments about cross-cultural learning. The documentary footage showed her in her element, not performing royalty, living it, engaging deeply with communities, understanding their challenges, offering institutional resources where they could make genuine impact. The contrast became the dominant media narrative by late August. On one side, Catherine advancing educational missions across continents. On the other side, Harry and Meghan attempting to liquidate assets before creditors seized them. One represented the future the monarchy was building. The other represented the consequences of institutional betrayal. In late August, Harry and Meghan made a final attempt to negotiate with Netflix. Their legal team proposed a settlement at $35 million, arguing that this represented a compromise position that would allow both parties to move forward. Netflix's response was immediate and final. The company rejected the offer and announced that trial preparation was proceeding on full schedule with full damages sought. Netflix wasn't interested in compromise. The company wanted judgment. It wanted vindication. The Montecito estate sale collapsed in early September. The buyers, after conducting due diligence and becoming aware of the pending legal judgment, withdrew their offer. No other serious purchasers materialized. The property remained on the market, but potential buyers were spooked by the legal uncertainty. Who would invest $18 million in a property owned by defendants facing potential criminal charges? By September 2026, the institutional reality had become absolute. The monarchy had decisively chosen Catherine. Netflix had decisively chosen Catherine. The legal system was proceeding against Harry and Meghan without mercy. The couple that had once seemed poised to revolutionize royal engagement with global platforms had instead become a cautionary tale about the consequences of institutional betrayal and financial fraud. By September 2026, the institutional reality had become absolute. The monarchy had decisively chosen Catherine. Netflix had decisively chosen Catherine. The legal system was proceeding against Harry and Meghan without mercy. The couple that had once seemed poised to revolutionize royal engagement with global platforms had instead become a cautionary tale about the consequences of institutional betrayal and financial fraud. The trial was scheduled for early 2027, but by that point, the outcome seemed predetermined. The evidence was overwhelming. The institutional support for Netflix's position was complete. Harry and Meghan faced not just financial ruin, but potential criminal consequences. Their lawyers were already discussing plea arrangements with prosecutors investigating the Archewell financial irregularities. Meanwhile, Catherine's Legacy of Learning series was approaching completion. The documentary had already generated international interest. Educational institutions across the Commonwealth were requesting screening rights. The BBC was planning a major broadcast event for the series premiere. This wasn't just content, it was institutional validation that the monarchy could engage with global platforms authentically, meaningfully, and without compromising its values. King Charles stood in the gardens at Buckingham Palace in late September, watching rushes from the Catherine documentary. He turned to a senior advisor and said simply, "This is what the crown should look like, not spectacle, service, not performance, purpose." The statement captured everything. The Sussex era had ended not with dramatic announcement, but with quiet institutional rejection. Catherine's era was beginning not with fanfare, but with demonstrated capability. The monarchy had learned that authentic partnership built trust in ways celebrity never could, and that trust, ultimately, was the most valuable asset any institution could possess.